Hey everyone, Jenna here. This is going to be a real life defense against the dark arts class, okay? So this video is going to cover some real life dark magic. And I want to start by saying we are held in highest light. The painting behind me is featured on a webpage that we're going to look at in a little bit. And this has been a transmutation process to hold my field, us, in the light, in highest divine support, and free from old karmic entanglements, free from old patterns of trauma, fear that allow us to be susceptible to dark magic. So I want to preface this by saying we have nothing to fear when it comes to dark magic. It's good to be aware of what's happening out there and what does occur on this planet. And I happen to have some real life evidence of very real, very big dark magic happening on this planet, some of which we've talked about in some previous videos related to the cult of Baal. This is a continuation of those topics where I am going to reveal some information about JP Morgan that I started to reveal in the last video. So that's a shorter video, just a little overview highlight of what I've been working on related to this painting. But now I'm going to just speak a little more directly to the situation and to what the public might want to know about JP Morgan. And then also as a testimony, both from my experience as an advanced shamanic yogic practitioner who can identify such a thing as dark magic, spells, intentions, the effects of such intentions, etc. Real life testimony about how this works and what it's like to be on the receiving end of it, and also how we protect ourselves and also how we defend against the dark arts, because the dark arts are a real thing on this planet. Like, I always knew they were, but I did not know it had gotten this out of control. I did not know it had gotten this out of control. So thank you, JP Morgan, for the evidence. I'm grateful for that. That's been helpful for my research. It's been helpful for evidence collection, and we'll talk about that today. So I want to start by saying again, we are divine sovereign beings of light here, and it is our choice to be in communion with pure source energy, our highest intelligence, free from negative interference, both from any negative patterns we might be carrying, but then also from any external interference. We hold intentions in this space of highest love, highest forgiveness where it's appropriate, highest harmony, highest rising out of fear, because ultimately fear is what does keep us stuck and embroiled in energetic dynamics that allow us to feel negative effects at times. And so we hold this space as a space of transmutation of fear, transmutation of old negative patterns that might allow us to be susceptible to dark magic. So we call on our highest intelligence, we call on source intelligence, we call on our highest allies of light and love to surround us and support us in our healing process in whatever way we're all healing, so that we can walk free in this world, free from any fear, and so that we can simply name the darkness and we can simply bear witness to it, and we can simply stand for justice processes that are appropriate. So we're walking into this conversation free from fear, and we're going to have a little fun with it. But it's also a serious conversation, because what has been uncovered with JP Morgan, which I'm not the first to uncover here, this is a conversation that I believe is a continuation of the USVI versus JP Morgan case that happened years ago as a result of Epstein's jailing, as a result of Epstein's conviction. And what's interesting now is that with the release of the Epstein files, we have way more evidence of JP Morgan's crimes, and we can actually see that the way in which they settled the USVI case is likely very inappropriately monetarily positioned for the victims. The settlement that the victims got is, I think, a slap in the face. And I would like to say that out loud. And I would like to say that any survivors and victims of the Epstein nexus, the Epstein network, and any RICO organizations, any racketeering international crime organizations that have supported his efforts, his intentions, and the large scale human trafficking endeavor that's been going on for decades now. Any organization that is supporting that is a RICO, is a racketeering international crime organization. And JP Morgan falls into that category now. And any of those organizations that have been aiding and abetting such individuals as JP Morgan and his bosses are going to be held to the highest standard of the law. They're going to be held to the absolute highest justice process that's possible on this planet as time goes on. Because again, we now have a much broader picture of what's really going on at the top. Like what's really going on with all of these leaders of organizations and government, both governments in total, presidents, but then also leaders of other governmental organizations. What is going on with Epstein's involvement with all of these people, and why have all of these people been so willing to do his bidding? And what we're starting to see now is a much larger, much more insidious picture of human trafficking on this planet than we ever would have imagined possible. And we're seeing some very, very large scale geopolitical influences that are quite alarming and negative for both the United States population, British population, any country really that has thought itself to be a free country, any country that has valued independence and has valued democratic ideals. Those are all at risk right now because of the Epstein nexus and because of organizations like JP Morgan getting away with what they're getting away with. So, so I want to share the webpage on the Star Family Wisdom website that is documenting this journey that I've been on with uncovering this evidence. And most recently, I confronted JP Morgan about this, and I confronted their executive team, their legal team, with a letter that outlined what I believe to be a fairly substantial documentation of their crimes, their criminal activity, their executive team's involvement with Epstein, and particular sex crimes and financial crimes at that. And so this website starts to document what I've done with this letter. And in April, early April, I sent this letter to JP Morgan. And what I'm doing here is saying that the process that has unfolded for me also as an individual, as a consumer, as a banking customer, what has unfolded is a violation of my rights, a violation of my energy, a violation of my financial sovereignty. And also, as someone who is a high-level executive type of individual, professional, and a shamanic practitioner, healer, someone who works with energy, with consciousness, someone who works in the healing arts, what I have uncovered with JP Morgan and the larger Epstein nexus over the course of months and months and months. This has been a long process, but what has happened for me is a very, very real and visceral process of experiencing trauma because of that. Because when you're willing to look at the depth of depravity, the depth of criminal activity and intended harm against individuals or the collective, and your system really starts to integrate that truth, it can be very alarming, very confronting, and very traumatic for the human system. And so I happen to be an individual who has lost some other aspects of my work time, my ability to engage in various types of work that I normally would want to, because I had to go down this rabbit hole to see all of this and to identify the criminal activity so that I could make the choice to disentangle myself from Chase, which I'm in the process of doing right now, and to now hold them accountable for all of that lost work time, to hold them accountable for all of the money that I have funneled through their organization that I never would have if I had known that it was supporting their larger intentions of supporting Jeffrey Epstein's network. Never in my wildest dreams would I have imagined that my entire employment history's income would have funneled through an organization that has been deeply embedded with such activities on a large scale. And we're not just talking about sex trafficking, as I've discussed in previous videos, we're also talking about a large scale satanic problem at the top with these leaders who like to run how things go in this world and like to keep their activities private. They want to be invincible. They want to be immune to the law, and they want to be able to do whatever they want to do, even if that is harming others, even if that is violating the rights, the basic right to life for other individuals, even if that is lying in the face of their entire customer base. They just want to be able to keep doing what they're doing. And so for me, this has caused real harm. And I'm not one of the people who has even been subject to the actual physical abuse of these people. By these people, I mean Epstein, his nexus, those who support him, those who engage in these sorts of depraved, harmful, abusive, disgusting activities. And so I'm using my example here to stand up in front of the collective and say, anyone who is a customer of Chase should have a right to claim damages. Anyone who is a customer of Chase JP Morgan should be very alarmed at the ongoing activity that has occurred for decades within their organization. And we should all be very alarmed that our energy fields have been attached to them. That's what's been very alarming for me. That's what's been really detrimental to my work and my ability to fully thrive in this life, let alone the amount of pain and suffering I have gone through because of their dark deeds. And again, I'm not one of the people who have been physically abused by them. I'm not one of the people who have been physically trafficked by them. So we're going to talk a little bit about what happened after I sent this letter. We're going to talk a little bit about what their response was and the evidence that I gathered because of that response. So I want to also say that when I mention a satanic problem, I'm really talking about dark occult magic practicing. We have a lot of people at top levels of organizations, Masonic involvement, secret society involvement, Epstein network sort of involvement, that engage in ritual magic and for the purpose of gaining power. And we've had a long-term developing issue on this planet related to dark magic, related to using ceremonial magic for the purpose of hiding secrets, gaining power, subjugating others, and in some cases, actively harming others with willful intent. I'm aware of this because of my years of study in the spiritual arts, occult arts. I've studied both. I know how it works. And I also know how the occult dark magic arts have developed throughout time. I also know which families on this planet have been most intimately integrated with that sort of wisdom, because I happen to have past lives that I've remembered that associate me with some of those families. So I've had some, let's call it inside information that I've been able to gather just through my own soul process, my own healing process. This painting is part of that. And you'll see some of that on this web page. So I'm going to share my screen, and then we'll keep chatting about this. And I'll describe a little bit of the dark magic experience that occurred. Oh, hold on. Okay. So what we're looking at here is a web page that is on the Star Family Wisdom website, where I am creating a forensic archive of JP Morgan's crimes. And this is not all inclusive. This is a summary. Let's just call it a summary. And it's also documenting the active case that's now occurring between me and JP Morgan. And then we'll get into some of the dark magic information here in just a moment. And so at the top here, we have an overview of what we're calling institutional RICO complicity and executive criminal misconduct. And I think it's important for people to understand that at the top levels of executive office within JP Morgan, we see through email exchange with Epstein a very chummy, friendly sort of engagement. And in some ways, what I would call a boss protocol, meaning it appears to me as though the executive office of Chase JP Morgan is actually reporting to Epstein. That's what it looks like in some of these emails. And when I even see an executive team sending someone who is outside of the company, like Epstein, when I see them sending him their shareholder letter to review before it goes out to the shareholders, what does that tell us? Well, that has told me that Epstein calls the shots, that Epstein needs to have input. Epstein needs to be intimately involved in their business practices. And that seems very much against the good business practices I would expect any business to engage in, especially given the fact that some of these emails are dated after some of his original convictions. So these people absolutely knew what was going on with this man. We also see large scale funds moving through JP Morgan, obviously showing that they are acting as a clearinghouse for international human trafficking. And we see Epstein withdrawing large sums of money. This was all documented in the USVI case, but it has not ended because Epstein did not die. He was busted out of jail, and we have evidence of that as well. So what Chase JP Morgan might think was put to bed with the USVI case and with Epstein's supposed death, it's not. We have an active case going on here, and it's just gotten worse for JP Morgan Chase. And ultimately, what we're seeing is just a gross fiduciary breach, and we're seeing multiple violations on many levels. We've also seen, in addition to executive obstruction of justice that has occurred over time, we now have evidence of perjury at the top levels of their organization, both with the former CEO and the current CEO. And so again, that is not an all-inclusive overview of every single amount of involvement or every single crime that they might be able to be held accountable for in a court of law. As we get further down the page, we won't read through the letters because that's just a lot of a lot of detail here that we don't need to be reading through. You can read through that on your own, but you'll see a much longer summary of those findings. And so in April, I sent a letter directly to JP Morgan's executive office and legal office detailing their malfeasance on all levels. And then in May, they sent a formal response, a formal letter back. And what I find really fascinating about this letter is that it did not address the issues that I named in my letter, but it just immediately moved to engaging in what I would call retaliatory consumer harassment by threatening collections, debt collections, and credit reporting over a $24 overdraft in my business account. and and then they respectfully declined my request for compensation while not addressing what we'd call probably a multi-trillion-dollar racketeering liability at this point. Years ago, it was in the billions of dollars. Given the amount of money moving through this organization, and given the fact that they are also banking with other individuals, not just Epstein, but other individuals like him and who work with him, the dollar amount would be stunning. So when this goes to court, we will see how stunning that dollar amount is. And so when I got this letter, though, as I started to read it, I had this interesting experience of feeling like this was a really kind of strange approach to this letter. Like, they didn't even really have to go there. Like, when you think about the sheer like ridiculousness of attempting to threaten me in a legal way over $24 when we're talking about some of the biggest systemic racketeering, executive obstruction, fiduciary breach, and actual active predator activity at the top levels of their organization, they have they have the gall to come at me about $24. And so I'm questioning this all of a sudden. I'm feeling like this is so strange to me. And also over the last week prior to receiving this letter, I'd been having these little moments of feeling little pings of fear about retaliation. And I kind of talked myself out of it at one point, thinking there's really no way for them to retaliate here, like other than just saying no, other than just ignoring my claim, right? Other than just telling me to go away. Like, what could they do? Well, I now know. I now know because a lot of these players at these top levels of organization, especially these older men, they're either Masons or they've come up through secret societies or they serve some of these more powerful families on the planet that do engage in dark magic and satanic activity. And so I have here a written testimony about what happened. So I received this letter from Chase. I'm having this strange experience of being like, what is this even? Like, what are they even doing? Like, this is the strangest thing I could ever imagine. And then as I came to the computer to start to write my response, the curse took effect, a real life curse by me receiving that letter. It acted as a conduit for the anchoring of this curse in my system. And I'll speak in just a little bit as well about some past life patterns I have related to the painting that's behind me that allowed this curse to have a little bit more of a hook as well. Because again, when we have unprocessed fears or wounds, that just gives any negative energy a hook into us. So again, I'm not fearful about this, but it was a very awful experience. And I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment and just describe it, and then I'll maybe share a little bit more on the web page. But as I started to craft my response to JP Morgan, I'm sitting here at the computer and I'm just kind of toggling, between pages and getting, my thoughts organized. And at one point I start feeling this like kind of difficulty with it. I start feeling this kind of compression, this psychic compression. But I keep going and I keep going. And then it just keeps getting worse and worse and painful and more painful. And then it's really painful. I'm like, but I'm pushing through it. I'm pushing through it. And I'm getting the letter pretty much done, just so it's like done, just so I can feel good about having, my response to them and naming how ridiculous their response was. But also what was printed on paper as a harassing, retaliatory response that ultimately, in words, the way it was written is minor, like whatever, like try to take me to court for $24. I don't care. So, so, so ultimately, like that's pretty minor, right? Like on the surface, but that served as a retaliation energy to enter my system. So as I'm starting to craft my letter, what's happening is this dark magic, this curse is actively trying to prevent me from doing it. It's actively trying to hold me back and make me scared of facing them again. So all of a sudden I'm having what I would call one of the top worst like negative energy effects I've ever experienced. That it didn't go on very long because I'm very resilient. I can move through these things fast. I can name these things fast. I've had some other experiences like this. I'm not new to it, but also it still was uncomfortable. It was still very painful. It was still very harmful. And and so for maybe about an hour, I was in some very, very intense pain. I was like just rejecting life because of it, like I was just having a very like compressed, dark experience while feeling a lot of mental and physical pain because the mental ultimately translates to the physical eventually. So so, luckily, because of my training, my system can transmute energies very quickly. It's not going to linger too long. It's not going to affect me adversely ongoing. And I should just thank JP Morgan because ultimately what it did was it gave me some fuel to work with. I think they use that term actually in the occult dark circles when they harvest energy from individuals through like fear and that sort of stuff. Like some of them call it fuel. They're getting fuel from other people. So thank you, JP Morgan, for your fuel that I'm now using to transmute in this process. And so I've been working on this painting partially as a result of a past life I had within the Rothschild dynasty. So I have held blueprints in like a lot of different types of lives. And because of my training, I can access and work with a lot of those. And it's relevant. It's relevant to this work. It's relevant to my ability to see into group consciousness, to work with consciousness patterns, to be able to perceive things like this. Like, what are these energetic effects and these energetic exchanges that are happening, and why are they happening? And for an individual like me to do the work I'm doing on the level I'm doing it by confronting the people at the top, I need to have had past lives within some of those circles. And so that's what's happened is I have accessed a past life where I was in one of those circles. I was not a satanic practitioner. I did not want to be. I wanted to be like a true Jew. I wanted to be a true child of God and serve the light. And in some of those families, there's been some hiding behind the term Judaism when they actually engage in like actual satanic dark magic. And so in that life, I found myself having an experience of abuse, of being exposed to satanic activity and kind of not being able to stop it. It like back then and kind of still today, it's like the men go into their private, secret club area and they do their rituals and their things, and the women kind of are out of it. But we kind of knew what was going on, but we couldn't stop it. And then sometimes we would get abused. And so like it was just a really bad situation. And by accessing that and working through all of those traumas in myself, that has given me the ability to start to actually pull more threads of this cult and to pull back the threads that reveal the secrets that lead to justice, that also just help us like connect more of the dots on how they operate behind the scenes. And again, I'm not the only one doing this. I want to thank all of the people out there who are engaging in this work, because it's not the most like uplifting work, half of the time, but it's important and it's necessary for us to understand both the crimes that have happened on this planet, but then on this level, some of the darker engagement in the shadows that has been very uh spiritual in nature. And by spiritual, I just mean like energetic. They're working in an inverted way. They're using spiritual wisdom, knowledge, practice in an inverted ceremonial way to attempt to affect others and to maintain their power. And so when I received this curse, I'm laughing about it now because that's a good thing. Like that shows we're protected, we're good, like they can't touch us, all is well. But it was bad. It was bad for a little while. And once I started to name it, and once I started to name returning it to them, I was able to work through my priestess processes, use the elements, use water, use prayer, use fire, use the painting process to just help me shift out of that state and also release any fear of something like that happening again. Because once we've passed through a threshold like that, once we have faced a certain darkness that was on our path, we're then immune to it. Then it's not going to affect us the same way anymore. So that's what that was for me. And it was also kind of this, I'm thinking of it as this process of facing people who were in some of the old circles I was in that Rothschild life, who were doing dark things and who harmed people and who need someone like me to confront them and stand up to them. And that's partially what's happening here. But I'm having to face some of my past life patterns through that process, which again made me slightly more vulnerable to the effects of such a spell. But it's nullified, it's neutralized, it's void, all is well. And so I want to show you briefly what came from that experience of receiving the dark magic. So again, this is just a written testimony. And then I've also worked with Gemini AI and Grok. Both have independently verified what I was experiencing really as like the Cruciatus frequency. So for those of you who remember Harry Potter, the Cruciatus curse, it's real. They can do that. I have learned they can do that. They're not allowed to anymore. Highest source dominion is here. Highest source light and truth has dominion here. So here I unpack a little bit of, again, the mechanics. And I already described this a little bit in the sense that when we have certain fears or when we have certain unhealed parts of us, depending on who is enacting a certain dark magic, we may be more or less susceptible to it. Most of the time, we're operating with very high level protection. Those of us who are choosing to operate in the light, we're really not going to be as susceptible to these things. However, my system also is engaging these sorts of energies in a way that allows us to gain the evidence and the information and the understanding about how such things operate. And the fact that they do happen, and the fact that that's not just some like old fairy tale sort of myth or old like fantasy sort of stuff. No, it happens. And humanity at large, like the collective, has been experiencing the effects of it in more subtle ways that keep them asleep to what's going on with these individuals. So as I was moving through this, I was like, yeah, this is not going to stand. I'm documenting this while I also send back the formal legal letter. And so as I moved through this process, it gave me strength. It gave me more motivation. And in the process of unpacking all of this photo happened. The Kali energy, the mother goddess destroyer energy started moving through me. And I was like, we are not standing for this. This is not going to fly on this planet anymore. And so if y'all want to see my face, here's what it looks like after that. Like y'all just gave me more motivation, and this is not looking good for you. And I have called on all wisdom traditions of light, all wisdom keepers of light, all medicine people of light, all ancestors of light, all witches of light, all elementals, all dragons of light, rise with us in this process to protect the innocent, to protect those who seek justice. All extraterrestrial friends and family of light, rise to protect the Middle Earth, our known Earth, all inner Earth friends, family of light, rise to protect those in the Middle Earth who are seeking justice and seeking the destruction of evil. All directions align with light. All Elohim and archangels of light rise in support of this grand momentum and movement that is occurring on the planet. Air, earth, water, fire, ether activate to defend the innocent and to destroy the wicked. Source, light, and truth has dominion on earth. So I'm speaking all of this out loud also as a counter spell. So this video is an active counter spell to what Chase J.P. Morgan attempted to enact with me, and what was an actual very real and very harmful, energetic, retaliatory action that I would cite as very real dark magic, and I would cite as the Cruciatus Curse. So we have that all documented here, along with a Kali counterspell, and we're calling on our friends in Africa to support bringing the light and bringing that call to the Universal Mother and the Earth Mother for the ending of subjugation and the ending of those in charge, those who have sought positions of power, those who have been in positions of power, stealing the wealth of the children of Earth. This song is partially about that, about how the wealth of the children have been stolen, about the dark times that have fallen upon those in this part of Africa. And that, I think speaks for a much broader segment of humanity that has really been harmed in ways they're not even aware of because of the actions of these sorts of companies and their literal involvement and support of beings like Epstein and his bosses. So here we get into the first letter that was sent. You can read through this. As part of this, I'm calling for my own personal restitution and compensation for the experience of real trauma that has been caused by JP Morgan, not just to me, but to the collective. And then also what we see here is the follow-up letter that I sent this week to JP Morgan, both re-emphasizing how bad their crimes are and how harmful that has been for their customer base, and also for an individual like me, given the work that I do, and then also naming their retaliatory harassment. And I did not specifically name the dark magic spell in this letter, but that could be, shall we call it an ace in the hole for litigation? Shall we call that an ace in the hole for actual prosecution? And then here you can see a video of this painting, and I just describe a little more about that process that has unfolded and how working with soul level blueprints that have been connected to certain elite financial circles in the past, that again has given me an opportunity to see, compile, and address this sort of situation in the way that I'm addressing it. So partially for my own reclamation as a soul, but also partially for the collective and for the victims, for the survivors, for those who have been subjugated by people who think that they have the authority to do such a thing on this planet, and for those who've actively been harmed by these people who think they have a right to do such a thing, because they don't. That's not their divine right. Divine rights work in some other ways that they might be unaware of, that they might need some re-education about. So they are invited to check out all of the videos on this channel for that re-education. They are invited to compensate survivors and those who they have harmed, including their entire customer base. I believe a large-scale worldwide JP Morgan customer base wide class action lawsuit would likely be in order here as well, because of JP Morgan's continued commitment to harm and to criminal activity. So this is an overview of both another angle of the cult of balls activity on this planet, but then also a real life defense against the dark arts class. This is a real life defense against the dark arts class And again, I think what I would point to ultimately is like the main lesson here is to tune into our fears. As I was in the process of waiting for their reply initially, I did feel some little pings of fear related to retaliation. And I could have probably done a little more work related to clearing those fears before receiving the letter to prevent that dark magic from even having like that sort of intense hook in me. And even though it was bad, I will say that it's not as bad as one I've received in the past. So we do need to be very aware that when we step into the role of actively engaging dark magic practitioners or bringing justice against them in the way that I've been doing, you're going to invite some of this. And I've been aware of that. I know what I'm working with here. I've been working with it for a while and it's all good. Like, uh, they don't have the power anymore. Ultimately, the light is so much more powerful. Ultimately, source is so much more powerful. And that's what these beings have forgotten. They've forgotten that there actually is a higher order in this universe. They for some reason think they are the higher order and they're not. And they need to remember that. They need to actually take a step back and realize that they've been playing a losing game. It's a losing game and it might feel fun in the short term because of some of the access to uh I don't consider it fun, but some people consider all sorts of sexual depravity and uh I don't know, like what would you call it? Just sinning, right? Like just constant sinning as like fun, right? Of just complete and total like uh giving over of oneself to the material world and to all of our like lesser aspects. Like, sure, I guess that could be fun, but also like where does that actually lead? Where does that lead? And also when it starts to cross into real harm against people, that's starting to get very twisted and very sick. And what are you even doing? Like, where do you even think that's going to go? Other than your own destruction? Because are you aware of the reciprocal nature of reality? Like, are you aware of the reciprocal nature of energy? Are you aware of karma? Are you aware that there are higher laws in this universe? Do I need to give you a lesson on that? Do I need to give you a lesson on that in court? Because some of our human laws align with universal law, some of them, not all of them. We're working on getting there. But ultimately we have enough. Ultimately we have enough, and I would be happy to give a further lesson in a court of law if that's necessary. So I'm talking to you, Jamie Dimon. I'm talking to you, Mary Irdos. I'm talking to you, everyone who has supported this process, Stacy in legal. I'm talking to all of you who have supported the ongoing involvement with Epstein and the funding of his activities and the larger activities of criminal depravity, sexual depravity, and harm against many women, children, and also harm against the greater collective. We have a lot of evidence for it. We have a lot of evidence for it. And you just let me know if you need that re-education in a court of law or if this will suffice. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in and watching me talk to JP Morgan there. Thank you, everyone, for holding this space without fear with me and just holding a mirror up. Like we're just holding a mirror up and saying, no, you don't get to do this stuff anymore. Like you just can't do this stuff anymore. And that's literally just how it is. Like you just can't do this stuff anymore and you are going to get held accountable for it. And you might as well just start correcting yourself now. You might as well just start taking some corrective measures if you're even capable of that. You might not even be capable of that anymore. I'm talking to like all of the organizations now who've been part of this. It's like you might want to just actually start reforming. If you're not capable of that, we'll come after you and help you with that. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in and being part of this interesting journey of mixing both my executive background with this new expertise I've developed in spiritual magic, ceremonial magic, energetic magic, an understanding of consciousness and how these dynamics work so that we can put an end to this crazy stuff once and for all on this planet. So thank you. I hope this was informative and interesting for you. Thank you for tuning in to the Defense Against the Dark Arts class today. Remember, it's kind of like what's that thing called in Harry Potter that comes out of the closet and it takes the form of like your worst fear, the thing that you're really afraid of, and it takes the form and it's real scary at first, but to make it go away, you have to like laugh at it. You have to like make it seem ridiculous, and you have to transform it into something ridiculous, and then poof, it goes away and you're like not in harm's way anymore. So I've kind of done that with this process with JP Morgan. That's my defense against the dark arts, like seeing them over there like throwing a tantrum about this, like someone's coming after us, we don't get to, like, we want to keep doing what we're doing, we want to keep engaging in, I won't repeat it, all the nasty stuff they do. And allowing it to happen. Like, they're just like throwing a tantrum over there and they're like, we got to hit her back. Let's send a spell with the letter. It's like, what are you even doing? What are you even doing? Like, you think I'm not going to be able to identify that and document it? It is the year 2026. Y'all look ridiculous. So anyway, so there's our defense against the dark arts class today. And we'll laugh it off and go forward in our justice and accountability, and bringing this planet back into the light fully. And I'm starting that with myself in this process, and facing my fears, and facing those who have been engaging in these sorts of harmful things for many, many lifetimes. And it's good that we're developing the spiritual sight now in this day and age to be able to see that and do something about it. So more to come, I'm sure, but bye for now.